Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about autogynephilia, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about how it sort of came about in my life, and also sort of how it sort of affects you as a person, and sort of the sort of mental challenges that we sort of have to go through on a daily basis. So autogynephilia, if you don't know, is the sexual attraction to oneself as a female. So as an autogynephile myself, I am sexually aroused at the thought or image of myself as a female. It can come in a few different types. Example, a more common form of autogynephilia would be a male dressing up as a female and becoming sexually aroused by the action of dressing as a female. There's also sort of anatomical, where you sort of imagine or you pretend you have a certain feature, or you pretend you have a certain physical feature of a female. So for example, breasts, or a big ass, or whatever, or a vagina, and you sort of fantasize about that, and it turns you on sexually. So basically, when I was a little bit younger, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. So when I was younger, I have very, very vivid memories of a time where I would actually arouse myself at the thought of being a woman. I would pretend to do certain things that a female would normally do. I would act out certain behaviors, and I would actually arouse myself to these ideas, to these things. And I remember I must have been about the age of sort of 5 when it began. Pretty young, I know. But for me, it was just kind of confusing at the time, because I was sort of always questioned, like, why am I doing this? Like, why is this so? Why does it turn me on so much? And you know, after doing that, I remember being very secretive about it. I wouldn't tell anyone. I would hide it away from my parents. I would do everything I could to stop people from knowing that this was a side of me, out of, I guess, fear of either being embarrassed or of being rejected completely from society. And then, age 5, I sort of I repeated these things probably for the next 2 to 3 years. I can't quite remember how long it lasted, and then I think as I started to go to school, and things like this started becoming criticized, transsexualism, and then I think the fear started to build up, and I stopped doing these sexual activities, and I would revert back to just having this as a little secret. And then sort of like when I was about the age of 13, that you start hitting puberty, and your sex drive becomes a lot more prevalent. You start to develop more testosterone, blah blah blah, and this sort of feeds your sex drive. And I remember I started getting very confused. I had thoughts that I might have been gay at one point, and I was very confused by this, because sort of I wasn't attracted to men, but if I clicked into my autogynephilia, imagine myself as a female, I was sort of thought about pursuing sex with men would be of an interest. So I started questioning myself. That's at the point I was in denial. And then, I grew up 15, 16, became very confused, and I started questioning my gender identity. I started wondering whether I should change into a female, or, I think I'm a trans. I honestly thought that I was a transgender. You can't just be a transgender. I was born a male. I am a man who is sexually attracted to myself as a female. It's sexual paraphilia, and um, and then about the age of 18, 19, I'm 19 now, I started to understand it a little bit more, and it sort of all began to make sense. Now, I can get a little bit into the science of sort of why I possess this sort of female sort of characteristic. So yeah, what happened when I was younger, when I was pretending to be a female and acting out sexually and become very fantasized, and it was like a fetish. What happened was, everyone sort of has an erotic target location, which is essentially, in order for humans, to have sex, we need to have an erotic location. So for I'm going to do a normal person, a regularly a sort of normally developed person. Your erotic target location in your brain is mapped onto another person. So as for a heterosexual male, the erotic target location is a female. It is something that is outside. It is something that is outside of a person. Okay. Whereas for me, I had an error in this. My brain, when I was acting out as a female, the target location began to reflect on myself. So my target location became me. I am sexually attracted to myself, and because I was acting out as a female, I became sexually attracted to myself as a female, autogynephilic. It's very difficult because relationships, especially, I've had sort of three main relationships with females. I class myself as heterosexual to some degree, but in reality, when I look at these girls, I'm actually mapping. My brain is saying that's what you want to become as a person. So when I look at a girl, a female, I'm actually in my brain, I'm going, no, that's what I want to look like. I'm not actually attracted to them. I'm attracted to the thought of me being them. And that's something in relationships I never understood. I always, I'll be open about this, in sexual encounters, I had to do sort of a mental twist. If I was having sex with a female, I would sort of have to imagine myself as the female to get myself turned on, and then that gave me the ability to actually have sex with a female. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not sexually attracted to females, because I don't know this. I don't know whether my brain, I don't know whether I have an erotic target location that is outside of myself. For all I know, I may be, I may have both. I may be attracted to myself as a woman and also attracted to actual women. It kind of makes sense, because there has been, women in my life that I've looked at, and I have wanted to pursue them as sexual, in a sexual way. So yeah, I may possess them both, or it may be just that I'm trying to mirror these women towards myself. I'm just facing the truth of this. So yeah, that's sort of the erotic target location error that happens. There's a few phenomenons. I don't know really how to say the word, but there's a few cases that this can happen. Some people can map sort of even to animals, like having sex with imagining themselves as like animals, like bears or whatever. And basically, when you're younger, you'll have a teddy bear, and when these males begin to sexually arouse themselves, they sort of become fixated on this bear, and then they pretend to be the bear, and then their target location becomes directed once again on themselves. It's an error, and then they are attracted to themselves as a bear, sort of thing. There's certain cases where there's other cases where erotic target location errors are present. So yeah, that's sort of how that works. So yeah, relationships have been massively affected on my behalf. I've been in relationships with some really good women, some really good girls, and due to the fear of embarrassment and due to the fear of rejection, I've always pushed these girls out of my life, or vice versa. They've pushed me out of their life because I'm not being very vulnerable. I'm not being myself. So this means that I've always really just put on a mask in front of people. It's not easy. When you have something like this, it's not easy to come forward to people and to admit that this is what you have. I'm not going to say it's a mental illness, but it is certainly a disorder. It's not actually meant to happen. In regards sort of tackling the issue of autogynephilia, sex change, for me personally, I don't wish to pursue a sex change. I don't take away from anyone who actually is pursuing this. I think there's better ways of sort of dealing with it. I think management, as well as actually just coming to terms with yourself. I think that could be much more effective. I think if a lot more autogynephiles came forward, actually began to look at Blanchard's theory and actually understand that it is what is happening, it would be a lot easier to cope with, because more people would be aware of it, and there'd be a lot more support groups out there, and even counsellors would be aware of it, and I think it would just make the world a much better place. The idea of transitioning into a female, and you're basically becoming your sexual attraction, and I can only imagine that it comes with a lot of problems. You're actually, it's a mental, when you change into a female, it's sort of all a mental thing, because every time someone affirms you as a female, it's like a sexual hit. So like if someone changed into a female, it was autogynephilic, and someone came up to them and said, "You look beautiful today, darling, dear, whatever," it would be like a sexual hit, because you're being affirmed of a female, and that is a sexual stimulus, and it gives you sort of. So could this be the reason that when people, autogynephiles, change into females, that they for a short period of time actually feel a lot of satisfaction, because their brain is being sort of sexually directed in the direction that it sort of needs to be stimulated. But then it poses the question: when you actually have a sex change, for males anyways, you actually your testosterone, your hormone replacement surgery, your testosterone is decreased, and then your sex drive actually decreases. So you then sort of don't really possess yourself. You don't sort of, what's the word? You're just a female. I'm trying to get this accurate. You're not, when you start doing hormone replacement surgery, your testosterone levels are decreased, you don't have a sex drive, and then you don't have a sexual hit from yourself as a female, so you're just a guy in a dress. Sort of it works, I think. Um, and this explains why a lot of guys, when they have GRS procedures, there is a lot of people out there who actually desist or detransition back to males because the sex drive is no longer there. So they begin to realize that actually they are men in dresses, and then they go back to being a female. It sort of makes a lot of sense. I think that a great deal of research needs to be done into autogynephilia. I think that more work needs to be done on sort of treating guys like myself who are autogynephilic through management and psychotherapy and different types of approaches, and also. I'm not saying that there's a drug out there that cures this, but if we can sort of start putting ideas into the face of scientists and psychotherapists or whatever, maybe we can find a drug that actually suppresses these feelings and makes it a little bit easier to deal with in life. Like I said earlier about testosterone, when there's been cases of autogynephilic men who have taken testosterone blockers, and after taking them, once they've kicked in, they just feel sort of normal again, because this artifact, this feminine artifact that they've built up in their brain, it sort of just vanishes because it is of a sexual hit. I'm also going to quickly touch on homosexual transsexuals, HSTS. Completely understandable why these people decide to change their genders, because after all, these people, these males, or these people who are born males, they are homosexual. Their erotic target location is mapped onto a male, and not onto themselves, and then it makes sense for them to change into a female. A lot of these HSTS, they transition, they begin to feel happy in their female body, and they just get on and live their lives normally. But autogynephiles, I think if you looked into it, there's a lot of instability in the mental when it comes to these guys transitioning. And I'm not trying to offend anyone in any ways, but I know that a lot of autogynephiles, it's very common for autogynephiles to transition later in life, sort of the ages of 40, 50. Caitlyn Jenner, classic example of a 20th century autogynephile. They transition later in life, and they end up ruining their jobs. They lose their jobs. They're usually married, because, as I said earlier, we're very much heterosexual, sort of heterosexual, autogynephilic, but it's still based on a woman, so it's easy for the mind to sort of twist it around a little bit. Very much heterosexual, so they lose their wives. Often they have kids. Their kids, I'm not going to say that the kids resent them, but I'm going to say that a lot of the time the kids become very confused at what their dads are doing. And they often spend a hell of a lot of their financial, they spend a lot of their money on these procedures. And as far as I know, these procedures are very, very expensive. I believe the approach, I don't discriminate against any autogynephile who has a sex change. I just fail to believe that there's other ways of coping with this without being so extreme about it. And that is something personally that I am pursuing, learning to sort of come to terms with things, and testing different things, and I tell you, I've been pretty happy. It's not actually all that bad if you can come to terms with it. Now, I did do a series of videos on another channel to do with this. However, I had a few comments of people saying that I was being transphobic, sort of going against the trans community. But I think that I think that I'm just telling the truth of the matter. To me, from my experience, I can 100% say that I have a sexual issue. It is not a gender identity problem. I have a little bit of gender dysphoria, but it is caused through my sexuality. It is my sexual orientation that is causing this gender dysphoria, this discomfort. And anyone who tries to sort of disprove or debunk, Blanchard's theory, I just don't get how it just makes so much sense. And I think someone does need to go a little bit further with this. But yeah, that's basically all I can say on the matter. If you're a guy who's struggling with autogynephilia, like myself, it makes life very difficult. It isn't easy. Just sort of stay strong, and don't give up. Life is going to be difficult, but I think the more and more we push this out into the media, the more and more people become aware of this. It's going to become a lot easier for us to deal with it. So thank you very much for watching this video, guys. I might do another video going into maybe a little more detail on my life, explaining, like, really getting personal with how it's affected my life. And maybe if you're someone who is questioning whether you're an autogynephile, maybe I can sort of trigger something in your brain which makes you realize that you are in fact autogynephilic to some degree, and then we can sort of work from there. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm turning the comments off for a little bit, because I just know that I'm gonna get the shit kicked out of me. I'm gonna get called transphobic. I'm gonna get 1,000,001 people telling me that I'm wrong. I'm just trying to help people understand what is going on here, even from my own understanding as an autogynephile myself. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have an amazing day and keep fighting. Peace out.